Alright, so here's the video on how to write a DBQ in AP World. If you don't know what a DBQ is, you will by the end of this video. So pay attention. I would encourage you as always to take notes, just like you did for the LEQ, and be ready for a quiz on this video. So this is our last and final type of writing. Yay! You now will have knowledge of all three. So all of the notes are going to today focus primarily on the DBQ, but if you watch the LEQ video, you should see a lot of overlap, and I'm going to assume that you catch the references when I refer to the LEQ. This is our overview for today. I know it looks like a lot, but since we've already covered the LEQ, we're going to go through it a lot more quickly. So let's compare and contrast the LEQ and the DBQ. So what are some similarities to the LEQ? First, it is still an argumentative essay. Okay? You still are arguing a point, right? You are making an overall claim, and you're going to back it up with evidence and reasoning, just like you did with the LEQ. So that has not changed. Okay. Second, still remember all the do's and don'ts of LEQ writing. Don't remember? Here they are. Pause, look over them, and then come back. Of course, right now. Okay. You still need to CER in every body paragraph, okay? Each topic sentence becomes a claim to support your larger claim, right? Your topic sentence supports your thesis, and you use evidence and reasoning to back it up. And then finally, you still have to include prior knowledge, okay? The AP graders do not want you to only use the evidence that they give you. They want to see that you know something beyond the evidence that they give you. So here's what's different, okay? You will need to include evidence that will be given to you through 7 documents. So one of the reasons people like DBQs is because if they don't remember much about the time period, the College Board will give you documents to use. So yay for that. So the other thing that's new is you're going to need to include some level of analysis with those documents, and I'll explain that further as we continue. All right, so here's the rubric. Okay, the green box is going to be things that look very similar, and the yellow box are going to be slight differences. So first, you need a thesis, still 1 point. You need contextualization, still 1 point. Don't remember what those are? Go back and see the LEQ video from last semester. Okay, here's what first difference is evidence. In the LEQ, it was 2 points. Now it is 3 points. So how do we get the evidence points? Well, the first point is you have to use content of 3 of the documents to address the topic. Remember, they give you 7. As long as you are using the content of 3 of those documents to address the topic of the prompt, you can get your first point. That is the easiest evidence point to get. So just as long as you are talking about the content of the documents and you are addressing the topic of the prompt, then you should get that point. The harder point is to support an actual argument that addresses the prompt using at least 6 documents. Okay, I'm going to encourage you to use all 7. That way, if you butcher one or you struggle with one, then you still can get credit for 6. If you aim low and you miss one, then you can't get that point. And the last evidence point is when you use at least 1 piece of evidence beyond the document. So something that you already know prior to looking at the documents, and you want to use that in each body paragraph. Okay, so that's the new evidence points. And then don't forget there's analysis and reasoning. Now that also has changed, so let's put that in there. Okay, so this is 2 points. However, the 2 points are slightly different. So the first point, for at least 3 documents, again, we're going to aim for more in class. Okay, you need to explain how or why the document's historical context, intended audience, purpose, or point of view is relevant to your argument. Okay, notice this is or. Okay, do not go and do all of these for 1 document. Okay, for at least 3 different documents, you need to include 1 of these elements. Okay, so we'll cover that. You'll see what that looks like a little bit later on in this screencast. Okay, the second point, again, is our unicorn point. It's showing a complex understanding of the focus of the prompt. We are not going to worry about that until we get the other 6 points under control. So the DBQ is out of a total of 7 points. Okay. So 1 point, 1 point, 3 points, and 2 points. Similar, okay, but one more point added in. So how do we structure the DBQ? Boom, you've seen this before. It's the essay bot, okay? So you're going to write it the same way. You're going to put contextualization up here. You're going to put a thesis. You're going to CER link, okay, in each body paragraph. You're going to restate your thesis in the conclusion, and then you're going to find a nice way to wrap up your paper. Okay, so they give us documents and primary sources to use. Where do those go? Those go right in here, okay? In the LEQ, you were responsible for all the evidence. Now, you need to bring in your own evidence, but also include the evidence that they give you, okay? Now, they use a variety of different documents, so you can use those in a way that makes sense to you. But always remember to include your own evidence in there, because remember, that's one of the rubric points. All right, so here are some DBQ do's and don'ts. Okay, new don'ts and new do's for a new style of writing. Number one, don't forget that this is an argumentative essay. So don't forget that same structure of the LEQ. Okay, so you same format. Essay bot, you're building an argument. Okay, second thing, do not directly quote the document. Okay, some people think that will get them credit. It does not get you credit. You have to do something beyond quoting the document. In fact, when you quote a document, I'm not even going to read the quote. I'm going to skip to the very last part, last word, look for the end quotations, and then look for your analysis of the document. If it is not there, you don't get credit. So, analyze each document. If you use HIP, it's going to help you do that. Okay? Don't summarize the document either. That's just as bad as directly quoting it. Okay? The readers, including your teacher, know what each document says. Don't tell us what it says, but go one step further. Consider the historical audience, historical context, the intended audience, the purpose, the point of view. Okay? Don't refer to the document as document 1 or document 2. Okay? Because DBQs change every year. And even within the year, certain parts of the country might get a separate document. So name the actual document. Refer to the title or the author. You'll see what that looks like in our examples later. Okay, don't use the documents in order unless it absolutely makes sense. But rarely will it ever make sense for you to use those documents in order. Okay, group them in a meaningful way, like we've practiced in class. And that meaningful way is always to build an argument. Okay? Don't aim to use the minimum number of documents, and don't aim to analyze the minimum number of documents. Aim to use and analyze more than the minimum. Okay? So as you can, I want you to include the content of all 7 documents. That way, if you mess up one, you're good. And I want you to analyze more than 3. Okay? That way, if you mess up the analysis of 1 or 2 of them, and you've analyzed 5, you're still in the clear. All right, so types DBQ prompts. Boom. Same as LEQ. Causation, comparison, continuities, and change. Sounds like it might show up on a quiz. All right, what does the DBQ prompt look like? Okay, so when you get this prompt, here's what it's going to look like. And it's purposely blurry because I don't need you reading everything. You're going to get a page of instructions. And either at the bottom of this page or the top of the next page, you will get the prompt. And it's always number 1. Okay, and it will give you a prompt here. And then you will get document 1 and a source information and the primary source. Document 2, source information, primary source. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now notice most of these are written sources, but they're not terribly long. Okay, they're a paragraph or 2. Okay. And they almost always will put some sort of graph or image as a primary source in there. If you're lucky, you will get more than one. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Okay, note that these pages should be covered with annotations at the end. You should be underlining things in the source information. You should be writing out potential groupings on the side. Okay, perhaps a HIP element on the other side. Okay, if I look at your documents at the end and there's nothing written, you are not planning to effectively to write your DBQ. Okay, no document should be left blank. So what does using a document as evidence look like? Well, let's take this as a sample prompt. I made it super basic so that there's no confusion here. Compare the various causes of the Renaissance. Okay? So, let's pretend you've read through 3 documents and then you get to this picture for document 4. Okay? Now, this is one we showed in class, so this should look familiar to you. This is the Ambassadors by artist Hans Holbein, and it was finished painting in 1533. Now, before we go into how to use it, remember that one of the things that we're going to ask for is an element of HIP for at least 3 documents. So for this document, here is what each of the HIP elements could be. Now, you only need to do one of these, but I'm going to include all 4 so that you can see this put into practice. Okay? Remember, you only need to include one of these for at least 3 documents. So if you saw this and you couldn't think of any HIP element to include, then you don't have to do it as long as you have at least 3 other documents. Again, the more that you can include, the more of a safety net you create. So let's take the historical context, okay? This was in 1533, so it's after Renaissance art is starting to flourish in Italy. It's the Northern Renaissance. Hans Holbein is from Germany. Okay, if you didn't know that, hopefully Hans does not sound Italian to you. It's a Northern Renaissance art, and it's also taking place during the time of the Protestant Reformation. Okay, which may play out with the secular nature of what we see, although there is a small religious component. All right, intended audience. Okay, remember when we talked about these are portraits, so they're commissioned paintings. Most likely, this was commissioned by the ambassador here. Not as likely to be the bishop, but most likely the ambassador here to the court of Henry VIII. Could be commissioned by Henry VIII, but more likely the ambassador trying to show his worldliness and knowledge, which leads into the purpose. Okay, that this is most likely to depict the wealth, right? As we can see, the opulence of what he's wearing, and the worldliness of this ambassador, to portray him as a true Renaissance man. Okay, someone who is gifted with lots of different things. Okay. And then finally, the point of view. We mentioned Hans Holbein's a Northern Renaissance artist. So because he's from the Northern Renaissance, he's from the area that's going through the Protestant Reformation, and the Northern Renaissance tended to depict more humanism, right? We see the secular nature of this, okay, with limited religion, but it's more secular. It's not like something depicting Jesus or Mary, okay, in Christian Europe at the time. Okay, so it's much more human-centric. So any of these that you can include in an essay that talks about one of the causes of the Renaissance, okay, when you bring up document 4, that's what you would want to do. All right, so body paragraph 1, rise of global interconnectedness. That's going to be one of my 3 body paragraphs. I'm going to say that one of the causes was the rise in the global interconnectedness. Okay, so here's the first body paragraph. And I just realized this is a thesis because I copied it from the last one, but is this a good, it should say paragraph. So one of the biggest causes of the European Renaissance was the rise of global interconnectedness. As can be seen, Hans Holbein shows 2 figures with lots of items on the table, including a globe. This shows how connected Europe was to outside places. Okay, so pause it here in just a second, and what I want you to do is think, does this summarize the article? Does it analyze? Does it bring in an element of HIP? Does it do more than just include it in this paragraph? Now, I didn't type out more because we're only going to focus on one document and including it in here. So pause and then check back in. All right, so this is not a really good use of the document. It literally, all it does is show, say what is shown in there. Okay, and then it doesn't even explain how the globe shows how Europe was connected to outside places. So this is not a great use of the document. Okay, Another bad use of documents would be if this was something written and all you did was either directly quote it or you summarized it. Okay, the readers have eyes and they know what is in the picture. So let's look at the next one. Okay, again, sorry about the thesis part over here. All right, one of the biggest causes of the European Renaissance was the rise of global interconnectedness. Almost the same opening part as the previous one. As can be seen in Hans Holbein's The Ambassador's painting, the wealth and prominence of the Renaissance can be attributed to outside forces. This painting depicted many items from abroad in order to show the worldliness of the ambassador. These items from places all over the world show the ambassador could not have been a prominent Renaissance figure without help from places both near and far. Pause it here. Okay, so this is a fair one. Okay, it does give much more. This would probably be on, depending on the reader, might give you credit, might not. Where it falls a little short is this painting depicted many items from abroad in order to show the worldliness. Okay, maybe mention one or two of them in there. Don't spend forever. That's not necessary, but at least one item might help. These items from places all over the world show the ambassador could not have been a prominent Renaissance figure without help from places both near and far. That's kind of vague. Okay, it's an attempt at analysis, but not awesome. Let's look at one more. All right. One of the biggest causes of the European Renaissance was the rise of global interconnectedness. Same topic sentence. As can be seen in Hans Holbein's Ambassador's painting, the wealth and prominence of the Renaissance can be attributed to outside forces. This painting, commissioned for the French ambassador to the English King Henry VIII, okay, so we're touching on right here the intended audience, depicted many items from abroad in order to show the worldliness of the ambassador. So now we're also bringing in an element of purpose, okay? Now, only one of these would be needed, and I honestly would maybe take this one step further and expand it just slightly more. But this does attempt and hit at a very minimum one of the elements of HIP. Okay. In fact, many of the items depicted in Holbein's scene showcase Arab influences, the arithmetic book, navigational instruments, that helped to fuel knowledge and technological advancements prior to the ones seen in Italy at the start of the Renaissance. Okay, so pause. All right, so hopefully y'all realized that this was a good use of the document, okay? So not only do we use an element of HIP, but we also brought in some outside information, or Arab influences that were around, like the arithmetic book, or I guess arithmetics and navigational instruments that were around prior to the start of the Renaissance in Italy. Okay, that is not something that was in the document, but it was outside knowledge that I brought in. So that is how you would include a document with an element of HIP and bring in some outside knowledge. So this wouldn't be enough for one paragraph. You would want to include at least another document in there, but this would be a great start to that body paragraph. All right, so just a quick note on this painting, okay? I used it to show global interconnectedness, or that was the one I attempted to, and depending on the style of format, or not the style of the actual writing sample we were giving, whether it was bad, fair, or good. So you can use this document to prove a variety of things. Maybe you wanted to show the humanism of the Renaissance, or the secular nature that caused the Renaissance to flourish, or the intellectual atmosphere that was created prior to the Renaissance. This one would be great for all three of those. How you use it is completely up to you. There is no one right answer. Where it boils down to is in your reasoning in your analysis of this, okay? So finally, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and please be ready to take this quiz on the assigned date on Canvas. Thanks. Bye.